My name is Kyle Miller, and I'll be doing my quality of character presentation on integrity. So, give an introduction to what I'll be talking about in this presentation will be what does integrity mean, why is integrity important, and how does someone display this quality in life. So, first, to provide a dictionary definition, integrity means a firm adherence to a code of especially moral or artistic values, an unimpaired condition, or the quality or state of being complete or undivided. My personal definition of integrity is the ability to do what is morally right under any circumstances, unwavering commitment to an ethical set of values, or the ability to combat popular opinion to do what is right. So these are the three components of my personal definition of integrity, and I'll provide one example for each component. So first, to do what is right under any circumstance. A great example that can be found in professional sports is Brett Favre, who was known to be a guy to play through injuries and do what he needed to do to be the one to win the game and be a leader on his team. So at this time, the league was starting to become more conscious of injuries and protecting players. So his coaches advised him to sit out for a game when he had encountered an injury. And despite him wanting to go out on the field and go out that weekend and play, he did not. And he listened to his coaches and stayed true to what he believed in, which was listening to your coaches and doing what is right. And he ultimately sat out and supported his teammates despite his desire to play. Another example of being committed to an ethical set of values is Muhammad Ali refusing to fight in the Vietnam War after being drafted because of his religious beliefs and opposition to the war. So despite what the common belief was at the time that you should go fight in the war if you're drafted, Muhammad Ali stayed true to his religion and what he believed in, that the war was wrong and he didn't want to fight in it. And he ultimately was stripped of some of his boxing titles at the time, but no matter what they did to him, he stayed true to his values and what he believed in. And for my third component of my definition, which is combating popular opinion to do what is right, a great example of this is Joe Madden making unconventional pitching changes to protect the well-being and health of his pitchers. So while many people were criticizing Joe Madden for pulling pitchers prematurely when they were doing well, he decided that that's what he believed was right and that's what was working. He wanted to protect his players from getting hurt. This is what he did, and he ultimately went on to win the World Series with the Cubs this year. Additionally, why is integrity important in coaching and leadership? First, integrity is important because coaches earn the trust of their athletes and staff. So being a coach of integrity helps your athletes and staff to know that you're a person that's going to do the right thing. You're a person that has the best interest of everybody in mind, which instills trust in them, in you. So it makes them believe in you and trust what you believe in. And second, being a role model for athletes. Being a coach of integrity is so important because athletes that are being coached are typically children, teenagers, or young adults who are very impressionable and still becoming who they're going to be. So being a role model, someone that these athletes can look up to, and also having values that they can take on themselves and carry into their life is extremely beneficial, which goes into my next point, which is holistic player development. Holistic player development is super important. A lot of times, some coaches only care about what their players can do for them to help them win a game or win a championship. So being able to be a coach that cares about your players holistically and who they are as a person and how you're helping them as become a better athlete and also to become a better person, so when they go on and leave your program and go into life, they're prepared for the rigors of life and to do the right thing and be a good person. And lastly is community influence. Coaches are able to have a massive influence on their community. So being a coach of integrity, someone who does the right person, helps the coach to get the backing of a community, to get people to believe in them, believe in what they're doing for the school, for the program. And it's really good for helping a coach get support. And additionally, one of the texts from this class by Marx provides a great quote that gives an insight into the importance of integrity as a coach and what integrity as a coach is all about. So Marx's quote says, "In the midst of all the peer pressure, the whole social setting, it takes tremendous courage to stick to the right values." This couldn't be more true in coaching. There's a lot of outside pressures, whether that's from parents, boosters, numerous other things. And when it comes down to it, coaches are the ones that have to make the difficult decisions and stick to their values. So this quote is great for coaches to hear. And then additionally, there's also a lot of insights on integrity that can be found in the Bible that is very relevant to coaching and leadership as well. The first verse I found that I liked that's relevant to integrity in coaching is, whoever is faithful in small matters will be faithful in large ones. This couldn't be more true in anything in life, but especially coaching. Being faithful in the small matters is going to help a coach be faithful in the large ones as well. And additionally, modeling integrity in coaching and leadership can be found in the story of Joseph in Genesis 37 through 50. This story tells about Joseph's life, where he was sold into slavery by his brothers, was faced with temptation and remained faithful and remained his integrity, and which ultimately led to him becoming a prisoner, where he still remained faithful to God and still upkept his integrity to where he started to see some benefits from this. He became sort of in charge of the other prisoners where he was at, put in a position of influence and power, where he was ultimately able to move on to larger positions of power and influence, where he eventually saved a lot of lives and did a lot of good. And this is the same thing in coaching. If you don't have the success at first, you can't just take shortcuts. You have to stay true to what you believe in, true to what you are, and the good things will come. And the bad things can also come if you lose your integrity and start going against what you believe is right. A great example of this would be Lance Armstrong, a very famous athlete who used performance-enhancing drugs throughout his career, and he was ultimately stripped of all 7 of his Tour de France titles and banned from the sport he loved for the rest of his life. Another example would be a coach from Louisville basketball, Rick Pitino. He was involved in a recruiting scandal, providing inappropriate benefits to players that they weren't allowed to have, and he was ultimately stripped of his national championship as well as fired from his position as the head coach. And moving forward, how do I use integrity in my role as a coach, as a strength and conditioning coach in particular? A big one in strength and conditioning is supplementation. Kind of like what was touched on with Lance Armstrong. There are a lot of performance-enhancing supplements that athletes are not allowed to use. It's important that I not only educate my athletes on the dangers of these supplements, but also the dangers it can have on their lives, on their careers, on their teammates. And also, same thing with model behavior. I don't take any of these things, and it's important that they know that as well, that even if you're not competing, you shouldn't be taking these things, and nobody should be using them. Additionally, honesty equals safety, whether this is supplements as well as their training. Being honest about their maxes on max days, not lying about their maxes so that they can beat out their teammate to see who's stronger. Ultimately, we're going to use these numbers for their percentages for their next training phase. So if they lie and their max is too high for them, they're ultimately going to end up hurting themselves because these percentages are going to be too high for them. And then lastly, managing expectations of sport coaches is a big one. This is where I see my integrity have to come through the most, because I do want to please the coaches. So if a coach comes to me and says they want every single athlete on their team to gain 10 pounds of muscle and get faster in a month, sometimes I have to be the one to talk to these coaches about the fact that they need to have realistic expectations for their athletes. And sometimes I'll have to bring them down from where they're at and come to a middle point where we can agree on what's realistic for them, for the safety of their athletes, as well as their psychological well-being and performance in their sport. So in conclusion, coaches can display integrity through a few things, and a few of the biggest ones are modeling behavior, ethical decision-making, and commitment to values. These things are absolutely crucial to being a coach of integrity. And to answer our last question that was touched on in the beginning, why is integrity important? Integrity is important because it teaches athletes behavior that will help them during their life after sport. Ultimately, coaches are there to develop their athletes in a holistic way. So being able to give athletes something they can take on into life to make the world a better place and be a better person is what being a coach of integrity is all about.